Welcome back, treasures. Today I'm going to make this cute little flower out of old book pages. So I used some book pages that I had dyed with some coffee and some shoe polish, but you could do some from undyed paper as well, any paper, colored paper. I have a couple of these punches that I got at my thrift store clearance craft shopping, and I have two that are in kind of different sizes that look the same pattern, so I'm going to use those. But you could have anything that was in kind of a circular shape that was one size and then a different size, but the pattern doesn't have to be the same on both sizes. That would be kind of cool too. So I'm punching out 3 of the bigger ones and 3 of the smaller pieces as well. And then I'm going to stack the pieces on top of each other, and I want to kind of alternate where the edge falls when it hits the other piece. So I don't want them to be completely lined up. I kind of want that little curve of one piece to fall in the kind of crevice area of the other piece. And so I'm going to do the same thing for the third piece and want it to kind of alternate as well. Once I have those, I want to stack the smaller pieces directly in the middle, and I also want to alternate how the edges fall against each of those. I was attempting to make it kind of alternate from the bigger piece as well. It kind of worked out, kind of didn't work out, but I was more concerned about each piece to its coordinating size. After those are lined up, then I'm just going to sew them together. Now I didn't pre-punch any holes. I'm just starting at the bottom and pushing the needle all the way through, but I'm going to leave a tail of my string, and I'm going to put a button on. Any button you use. I liked these little kind of pearl-esque whitish buttons, and it is a little hard to get the needle all the way through because it's going through multiple pages. There's no pre-holes punched, and so the thread, this is waxed thread, initially doesn't kind of want to pull through, and then it'll make that hole bigger and come through okay. So just safety and be slow and careful. I'm just sewing this together like I'm sewing a button on some clothing. So I'm going in this case I'm going across. Maybe you sew your buttons up and down in a kind of a square pattern. It doesn't really matter. Do what you want to do. Make some of each way. Let's just have fun with it. So I came out to the back, and now I'm going back through the back into the front, and I just kind of felt around with my needle to try to find where the indentation goes for that next hole, and then I poked through the paper because I don't want to poke through the same hole, and that's really easy to do with paper. Now to tie this later and to make sure that everything stays tight, I put the tail through the loop before I pulled the loop tight. Now I'm just doing that on these particular flowers that I am sewing up and not attaching to anything. They have plans to be put into the inside of a junk journal, but I'm not sure which pages yet. So that's why I didn't sew them directly into the journal. So just to show you that you can kind of make these ahead of time to use later, or I'll show you on the next one in just a minute how we can sew that directly onto a little mini journal or the cover of a journal as well. Now to tie this off completely, I kind of wrapped it around the tail and then put my needle through the loop and then tightened it. So it made a nice little knot there on the end, and then I just cut off the excess tail, and now it's a cute little flower. So I can do the same thing with those flower pieces, and sew it directly to the cover of a little junk journal I'm making. First, I am going to poke some holes in that so my needle will go through easier, because that's a lot to go through. But when I started, I was not using appropriate safety precautions and poked my finger. So now that I have bandaged myself, and I did avoid getting blood on the journal, so, important things. But now that I'm bandaged, I'll just poke the rest of these holes, and you can see that there are actually 4 little holes next to each other the way a button lines up. And so for this, I'm going to sew through the kind of inside of the journal flap, then through the middle of a paper, still just kind of eyeballing that middle. I don't always measure. If your OCD is making you hit the middle, then, measure it out. Put a little dot there on the back so that you can see where that is. Then I'm going to thread the button through and get everything kind of flush to the journal. So you see how it's kind of moving around a little bit. We'll stop that by kind of tightening it up at the end. And then I'm just going to sew it on. Like, again, you're sewing a button, whichever way your preference is for sewing those buttons on. And I'm going to make sure that I go through the holes that I punched into the journal cover. Otherwise, your needle's not going to make it through there. And you'll see it's still kind of tight to get that all the way through. And then I just follow the holes here. And again, just kind of gently try to find it, move around till I get that indentation in the paper before I punch through that particular buttonhole. If you enjoy crafting and you're enjoying this video today, I hope you will give me a thumbs up below and be a treasure and hit that subscribe button. Then you can stay up to date on all my new crafting adventures. Now again, I'm going to stick the little tail through the loop before I pull the loop tight. And this just gives extra security for when you're tying off that knot at the end. I am using waxed thread, so the chances of it coming untied are pretty rare here. And I'm going to line the inside of this journal, which I'll show you in just a minute, so it kind of hides that as well. I'm going to go around the tail and then through the loop that the tail makes to tie off a nice little knot. I'm just going to snip off the end, and then you'll see that our flower turned out really cute on the front of the journal. But this is just the cover, so let me magically make it a journal. And here we go. We have our flowers that we didn't sew onto anything at all, and then our cute little journal with the flower sewn in, and it's been lined on the inside. Should have used a little thicker paper probably, because you can still see the lump from the knot, but it does look better and is a functional journal. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, keep crafting.